Hey everyone. So, instead of whining about Monster Hunter Rise, I'm gonna talk about myself. I have almost, no, I mean, it's almost at 2,000 people following me on this YouTube channel now. And I don't exactly want people to just know me as the guy who complains about Rise. I don't want to just be known as that. I want people to know me as a person, at least, at the very least. I made the mistake in the past where I said some negative, well, some snarky things about other Monster Hunter YouTubers. It was Super Rad and Gaijin Hunter in my videos and the podcasts I've been on, so I want to apologize for that. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to be known as the guy who makes snarky remarks at other YouTubers. Like, I've been bullied online before, and I know that, like, it sucks, even if it's just, like, a snarky remark. So, like, from now on, I only want to be snarky towards Capcom themselves, because, you know, I've given Capcom a lot of money and a lot of support, so I don't really feel bad for being harsh or critical. Bottom line, things are rarely ever black and white. There's nuance and context to everything, including my statements, but, you know, I just need to be careful with them, especially if I'm referring to people. I don't want this community to be divided or hostile. I know I have my own radical thoughts, but it's to give my unique perspective and to share any information I feel might be missing from the community. Anyway, for those who actually care, so the two of you who are watching the video right now, this video is going to catalog my Monster Hunter journey from the moment I first discovered the series up until now. It's nothing critical or analytical, it's just a personal story. I believe I've mixed up the dates before in my videos, but to confirm, I double-checked. The first time I played Monster Hunter Tri was on May 26, 2010, which was my 13th birthday. I know that many in the Monster Hunter community, they're like much older than me. I know that many of the old fans, they were teenagers in 2004, but I would have been 7 at the time, so I didn't play Monster Hunter 1, I was playing Pikmin 2. Monster Hunter Tri was my blind introduction to the series, and with zero outside context or guides on how to play the game, I was very lost and confused. It took me a long time to even be brave enough to fight, like, a Great Jaggy. So, it was an online game, and so I recommended the game to one of my school friends, and he very, very quickly overtook me in hours spent in-game. You can see my original save file for Monster Hunter Tri right here. It only has just over 200 hours, but he had well over 1,000 at least, I think. You know, he would always give me these strategies and advice on how to play the game more efficiently and how to use different weapons and how they all worked. Again, I recommended the game to him, but he seemed to know more about it than I did pretty quickly. My friend spent his time playing online in Locklack City. He socialized with randoms and learned from them. He went to online forums to understand motion values, damage buffs, damage multiplication. Unlike when Monster Hunter 1 first released in 2004, Monster Hunter Tri in 2010 already had a bit of a dedicated online community, so if you needed assistance, you could easily look up guides or advice, as my friend did. The thing is, I didn't realize that that was a resource, and I didn't realize that was something I was supposed to do, so I never did it. On top of that, I was just too afraid to play in the online town, Locklack. Most of my time was instead spent in Moga Woods, free hunting. I wouldn't even really hunt the large monsters, I was too afraid to. If you look at, compared to the amount of hours, if you look at like the amount of small monsters I've killed, it's like I would just go in Moga Woods and just kill like Jaggies and Aptonoff and Great Jaggies, which I have so many kills for Great Jaggies because I guess it was the only thing I was good at. I had not realized it at the time, but this was a clear indication that I viewed the game differently than most other Monster Hunter fans. I didn't understand that the aim of the game was to hunt the same monsters over and over again. I didn't understand the meta. The only thing that interested me was this experience, this hunting experience, and then the world. Eventually, of course, I did begin to understand things. I did eventually start going online, and eventually I was capable enough to fight like GYPCEROS and stuff. I assume that this is most people's journey. You know, you struggle with the first few monsters and then eventually you get good. The distinction was I didn't realize you could get good. I didn't understand that there was a get good. Or even the idea of playing to the meta, which would make the experience less difficult. I just thought the game was brutally difficult and it was designed to make you just be afraid of the monsters. So I was afraid of the monsters. While I didn't use the internet for advice on the meta, I did use the Monster Hunter Wiki to learn more about the ecology of the monsters. This is because I thought the AI for the monsters was more advanced than they actually were. I believe that the exploits could be found based on their ecology, not based off their hitboxes or hit zones or their very predictable movesets, which I didn't understand. So obviously I found very little help from reading the ecology notes because I was misunderstanding the game. The Monster Hunter Wiki then introduced me to the rest of the Monster Hunter series. I spent hours and hours reading everything on the wiki. I spent more time reading on this website, watching YouTube videos, looking at Monster Hunter artwork, and then drawing my own artwork, and listening to the Monster Hunter music than I actually spent time playing the game. I really didn't play Monster Hunter Tri that much. I also became obsessed with the Feline Village series, which launched in August 2010. I watched the anime shorts on repeat to try and understand what they were saying in Japanese. I had to get my mother to translate a bit of it for me. The little deformed chibi plushies, they released those at this time. I got the original run LUDROTH, which I believe is quite rare now. At the end of 2010, Portable Third was announced, and I followed the game's release quite closely. And actually, if you check the page history for the monster Rogi, I was the second editor for it. In September 2010, I added the first picture and some details. I thought I was so cool for doing that, as I was assisting the wiki. I was really afraid to interact with the editors because I knew they were all adults. That's really the only edit I ever did on the wiki, and it's been buried and lost in time. It's just if you check the history, it stands as proof that I was invested in following these games, despite not actually playing them. I finally played Monster Hunter Freedom Unite for the first time on Christmas Day 2010, and for a long time this was my favorite Monster Hunter title. Again, I never hit 1,000 hours. But I did double my hours compared to my time on Monster Hunter Tri. I preferred playing on the PSP, I was less restricted. I didn't have to share my family TV, I could take my game to school too, and I could play with friends. Nowadays I feel too embarrassed to even, pull out a Switch or 3DS in public or at work. Portable Third released in December that year, and I was excited for the eventual international release that never actually happened. But because I had just gotten Freedom Unite for Christmas, I was content with that for the rest of the year. That being said, on Christmas 2011, I finally did get to play Portable Third. Did you know that they released this game on the PS3 as well? I wasn't playing any of the English patches, I didn't know that those existed, so it was difficult for me to understand what was going on to the game. Again, I had to get my mother to translate, and I used a lot of guides. Also on Christmas 2011, I was gifted a copy of the Monster Hunter Illustrations book. It's really cringe for me to say this, but to be frank, this book changed my life. I have likely flipped through it 1,000 times. I love writing and world building, and I've been writing fan fictions and films ever since 2010. It's important that I recognize that this book kind of generated my love for the development pipeline, from concept to creation. I wanted to understand the universe that Capcom had crafted, and I obsessed over how they developed the universe. I wanted to do it myself, or at the very least, recreate it. I don't have them on me because they've been lost, but I even wrote my own quest lists, and I had my own Monster Hunter game designs that I had come up with, but I mean, it was all roleplay, it was all make-believe. Though a hobby I've never let go of is Lego. This is my Elatrion build. I'm quite proud of it. I built this year, in 2021. However, 10 years ago in 2011, I also built an Elatrion. You can see I've definitely improved, but this is a very expensive hobby. Like, this Elatrion build costs over $500. I don't recommend it. I've also constructed a number of other monsters from the franchise. Again, these are all recent constructions within the last few years. They are based on my designs from 10 years ago, though. If you thought that was cringy enough, during Easter weekend 2012, I went to my first anime/cosplay convention in Seattle. Wonder if any of you were there. My first ever cosplay was a feline palico and NARGACUGA equipment.
Bruh.
My friends believe this is where my Catboy-isms first started. My stepfather crafted the full NARGACUGA Blademaster armor, so we matched. Yeah, I find this picture to be quite cringy, I don't want to look at it. In 2013, Monster Hunter Tri Ultimate released in the West. I thoroughly enjoyed 3 Ultimate at the time. I even considered it better than the original Tri at the time. That all being said, present day I have kind of a mixed feeling on 3 Ultimate, and I kind of consider it more of a portable third 2, rather than like a proper 3G, but that's just me being radical and weird like usual. In 2015, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate released in the West. When Monster Hunter 4 was originally announced in 2012, I believed it was the end of the portable series. The mainline games had merged with the portable games, and to me, 4 really felt like something in between the two, taking the best aspects of every title that came before it, and it just generated this truly beautiful game. And I loved 4 Ultimate. I played it way more than Freedom Unite. Then in 2016, which was only a year later, Monster Hunter Generations released in the West. When Generations was announced, my theory of the portable series ending was just completely thrown out the window. I was wrong. And it also made me realize that I think I just don't favor the portable series, if that wasn't clear enough in my other videos. Generations and Generations Ultimate were hollow experiences for me. I really, in the end, it felt like a time waste rather than like a true Monster Hunter experience. Sure, it was cool to revisit the content from the old portable games with all the 4th gen updates, and yeah, it was a lot of content, and I did get a lot of hours out of this, but like, that was very sporadic. I found this title to be quite stale and repetitive. Though, through these 3 games, I actually finally understood the franchise's meta. Still, those who've watched my gameplay footage should immediately recognize that my gameplay is poor. I am a casual, and I don't see myself ever being able to actually speedrun, nor would I ever really want to. I don't really have interest in trivializing my experience. I mean, everyone just knows, like, certain players have different skill caps and dedication, otherwise, like, every player would be a speedrunner. From 2016 to 2019 were probably the worst years of my life, won't get into it, but I continued to play Monster Hunter through those years, and I actually got pretty excited for Monster Hunter World. Again, I didn't play online, I just replayed all the offline questlines of each of the titles, a bit of each from time to time. It was around this time that I started making my character Minako Aino, and I found that it actually compelled me to play more. I would build armor entirely for the fashion of it because it was on a girl instead, rather than playing for the meta. And I think because I just really liked this character, it was just fun to roleplay her existence in the Monster Hunter franchise. By 2019, I had a dedicated computer, so I could freely play all the different Monster Hunter titles I own through just dumping the games and then using console emulation. In 2020, I played through Monster Hunter 2, and that was my full playthrough for the first time. I dabbled in it before, but that was my first time truly playing through it all the way to the end. And that's what compelled me to write my video essay, which originally was intended to attack Monster Hunter World. However, as I kept researching and writing over the year, I realized that Monster Hunter World, it wasn't the death of the genre as I originally thought it was. It was actually more of a deeply rooted issue that bled into World that started with the portable series. Monster Hunter World is fantastic, and I really love that game, and it made attempts to return the series to its roots. Iceborne, especially if you do some like cosmetic mods, I really love it. I think it's one of my favorite Monster Hunter titles. It wasn't until the Rise demo was released in 2021 that I was finally compelled. I needed to finish and release that video essay. Despite its clear flaws in the thesis of my essay, which I'm aware of, I hope that the 3 hours of just evidence that I provided at least illustrates a certain point of view. You know, the point of view of someone that doesn't have 1,000 hours in the game, but rather 1,000 hours in fascination for the game. I started this Monster Hunter channel in 2018. That was during those rough years of my life. I was hoping that a change of pace online would make me happier, but what I actually needed was a change of pace in my actual life. In 2019, I had the fun idea to pull out parts of my stepfather's costume from the convention in 2012. And so I went and I filmed my Monster Hunter in real life, like, comedy videos. It's just a dumb skit. This video, you'll notice, is not on this channel at all. I've been on YouTube making videos since 2010, and that's through various channels. My username is not Jacob//Monster Hunter. It's actually more commonly known as Pikmin Jake. That's my most common username. The channel that met the most success was Pikmin Jake. It was my Pikmin channel. I was just like a tiny bit infamous within the Pikmin community for my cringy fanfiction toy videos. Autism is really one hell of a drug. The community sort of silently criticized my stories for the medium I chose to tell them in, you know, instead of like traditional animation of any kind. And because my stories actually had very little to do with the Pikmin franchise, and they had more to do with the Book of Revelation, though it should be noted that Monster Hunter always had a massive influence on my fanfictions, and as time went on, my love for Pikmin got lost, but my love for Monster Hunter only grew stronger. During the early 2010s, these types of videos were really popular with kids, and I gained subscribers pretty fast, so I continued telling my apocalyptic Pikmin fanfiction. You know, it's actually over 48 hours in length. I recently closed the book on Pikmin Jake, and I'm really desperate to move on from it, for real this time, so I want to focus on my Monster Hunter persona from now on. In moderation, of course. I prefer this community, even though online communities in general freak me out, and so I have to keep my distance, of course. The influence of the Monster Hunter Illustrations book is still felt today, and although right now I'm not producing narrative fiction, my company has been making environmental documentaries and shorts for not-for-profits and NGOs. I really value the stewardship messages that Monster Hunter was attempting to teach, or at least the messages I gained from my research of the franchise and my odd explorative experience with the games 10 years ago. One of the fondest memories I have is when my crew needed to get footage of a local fish known as a white sturgeon. White sturgeon are important indicators for the health of a local river. Their populations can tell us the condition of this local river. So my crew was out on these jet boats on the river, and we were hunting down and we were capturing, temporarily, we weren't like hurting them, these giant river fish, these giant river monsters. And I described it as the closest thing to real-life Monster Hunter I've actually experienced. Monster Hunter is, at times, kind of an ideal reality for me, which is cringy, but, you know, it's where we're required to be one with nature, otherwise nature will attack you, and in the franchise's case, nature is literally dragons, so there's more pressure to be one with nature and understand it. Unfortunately, in real life, nature doesn't send dragons at you when you try to break its rules. Instead, nature fights back slowly, like it changes the climate at a pace where a single generation doesn't notice, and then their grandchildren are forced to reconcile with the consequences of corporate greed and resource abuse. In Monster Hunter, when the guild sees monsters dying, they spend all their resources to find the root cause, and then they try to fix it. For better or for worse. In real life, when my team sees monsters dying in the river, the government does nothing. You know, activists will plead for the resources to try and fix it themselves, to save those monsters. Even if they did have the resources, they still cannot stop the root cause, because the root cause is unrelenting corporate expansion permitted by government powers. When I was critical of Monster Hunter World's narrative, it was in comparison to Monster Hunter 2, which I believe has a very effective subtextual message about environmental stewardship and understanding. This set a standard for me, that Monster Hunter should uphold the apparent values it explored in Monster Hunter 2, for every game. I argue that Monster Hunter 3 and 4 both uphold these same values, even if the focus was dwindling. Now in Monster Hunter World, as ambitious as it was, it completely fails to uphold those same values at the same level. And then Monster Hunter Rise fails so many times worse than World, in my opinion, in that regard. I have found that big-budget fiction will preach messages of anti-capitalism and anti-consumerism, yet they are developed by corporate overlords. Consumers are being trained to consume anti-consumerism, and they ignorantly believe that they, as insignificant individuals, are assisting in ending corporate overlords, which simply isn't true. Monster Hunter is important to me because it was a fiction that taught and celebrated a value that every culture around the world can agree on, that humanity is not in control of the earth. We must learn to live harmoniously with what we label chaos, what is actually nature. I'd like to see more narrative fiction like Monster Hunter reach more people. If humans are going to consume products, at least let them consume products that preach a culture of environmental stewardship and understanding. I find this to be far more valuable than the generic and unhelpful anti-consumerist and anti-capitalist messages in other media. And once again, that's just me being radical and weird. I hope you enjoyed this really odd video where I talk about my strange life and journey with the series, the evolution of it, and where I am today, and how it's influenced the work that I do today, and why this is so important to me, why I think we should uphold these values. Alright, thank you for watching. Have a good night. Bye.